A couple of months ago, I woke up and reached for my phone as I always do and jumped onto Twitter to see what the latest news and gossip was. And I was appalled to see that a lot of people in the disability community were really upset about a certain challenge that was happening over on TikTok. This challenge, hashtag autism challenge, was content being created by young people where they were mocking people with autism or other physical disabilities such as cerebral palsy. And I was absolutely appalled. I could barely watch any of the videos that some of my fellow disability activists were sharing. It made me feel really angry and really upset. And I had to do something about it. And in that moment, as I lay in bed looking at these videos, I made a decision to start a change.org petition, which I did. And in less than a week, I gained over 1,200 signatures and over 500 shares and a lot of outrage across social media about this particular challenge that was happening on TikTok. For me, it was a very eye-opening exercise because I actually took the time to investigate TikTok at a much deeper level. I hadn't really known much about TikTok before this. And especially off the back of some of the comments that I was getting from people on both social media and through the petition, there was one particular lady who introduced me to this concept called shadow banning. She was a young disabled woman who was actively using TikTok, and she was finding that some of her videos were being removed from the platform or suppressed. And as I dug deeper into this particular issue, I discovered that actually one of the many issues of TikTok is this concept of shadow banning, where they suppress content by not only disabled people, but people they deem ugly and overweight. My name is Elizabeth Wright. I am a Paralympic medalist. I am a writer, a speaker, and a most passionate disability activist. My activism, you could say, really started at a very young age with the influence of my parents, who took a challenge to the New South Wales Education Department in Australia to get me into a mainstream primary school. And eventually they won that fight, and I went to mainstream primary school for a 3-month trial, and I passed that trial, brilliantly, and the school took me on and really included me and made sure that I felt engaged and wanted within that community. And from then on, I went to a mainstream high school as well. And to me, my parents, through that act, showed me the power of standing up and challenging people and institutions that really need to be challenged. For me, with my experience, especially around disability. And this is what I want to talk to you today about is some of the issues that surround social media platform, specifically TikTok, but also how we can teach our disabled young people to feel empowered on a platform that can actually be quite disempowering for them, but also addressing how we can engage our non-disabled children to make spaces like TikTok an empowering place for their disabled peers to participate and engage with. So in this investigation into TikTok that I undertook, I discovered two particular issues that kind of needed to be addressed. And the first issue is certainly around TikTok as a platform in itself and the issues that it has within a particular scope or bubble. This is particularly stemmed around their policy and their moderators, and how the policy is being implemented by said moderators. And I think for me, the way that we have to address that is looking at the policies that they have and challenging the way that they are actually applying them to the things such as hashtag autism challenge and other discriminatory and bullying kind of content that's being created out there, alongside also the shadow banning, which I have talked about, where users' content, particularly disabled users' content, is being suppressed. And, for me personally, I think for young disabled people who are wanting to engage with their peers through a platform such as TikTok, this could be extremely frustrating and hurtful for them. So I think, on that respect, it's got to be addressed on that particular scale. On the other side, we really have to look at or implementation and education of disability awareness within schools, because on TikTok, 69% of users are actually between the ages of 13 and 24. So it's predominantly young people who are using this particular platform to create content and hopefully build audiences from that. So what I think we have to be aware of, particularly in secondary schools, is are we actually creating a curriculum that has disability awareness built into it? So whether it's through PSHE lessons, etc., are we actually teaching our children about the reality of disability and really humanizing that lived experience for particularly non-disabled students in our schools? Because I think if we can create this kind of empathy towards disabled people and their lived experience, especially for the non-disabled users of platforms such as TikTok, then we hopefully prevent the issues around such as the hashtag autism challenge that cropped up. So, with this twofold pronged approach, I think that it's certainly these issues aren't insurmountable per se. They're certainly something that we can address, but it might not be the quick fix that we so desire or need. I think as well what we have to be aware of is that social media is the language of young people, of children. As we know, they can so easily hop on the bandwagon of the latest, coolest social media platform that's out there. And that's what's happened with TikTok. And especially in the past 2 years, it's really taken off and become the social media platform of choice for young people. I think, there is this recognition within education that through using social media, we can actually use this to enhance the way that we educate children. And I think it's something to acknowledge, in that it could be used really positively and empoweringly as a tool for young people to engage with education. And I think it's important to acknowledge that in this space. But to really make that work at a broader kind of community, educational community level, I think it's about being aware of the negative and positive aspects of these social media platforms, and in particular we'll keep the focus on TikTok, and making sure that the children that we work with, both disabled and non-disabled, are aware of these issues as well, because it's not just about keeping them safe for themselves, but also helping them be aware that they can use their voice for good, as opposed to falling into that trap of memes and challenges where discrimination and bullying can occur. So let's address the good points of using a platform such as TikTok to begin with. And I will do this through the lens of disability, where it could be empowering, especially for young people with disabilities. And this is this sense of connection. For a lot of disabled young people, they may struggle whether physically or emotionally or through their mental health to actually engage with their peers in certain physical spaces in their community. And what social media such as TikTok does is provide them an avenue within which to engage with their peers in a really positive way. So I think it's being aware that for a lot of young disabled people, it is an avenue of communication for them to stay connected with their peers. And kind of what runs alongside that is also this other positive aspect of activism. And I know I've certainly experienced this myself, that using social media for activism can be a power for good. It can be a real forceful way of ensuring that our voices are being heard, as a platform that we can stand upon. And I think for young people especially, I've experienced, there's a young girl, 15-year-old Kurdish young girl on Twitter who has cerebral palsy, who is using her Twitter platform to really open up discussion about what disability is like for young people her age. And I think she's doing a marvelous job in raising awareness about the issues that she faces. And I think think, flipping back to TikTok, the same could be said for TikTok as well. And I think in sense of education, this is where education can really enable inclusion within certain activities and stuff like that for especially for their disabled young people that they might have. In terms of the bad, I think there are 2 or 3 particular points that we have to touch on, and one of them is about the mining of data. TikTok itself was investigated in the UK last year about data that they were keeping on children under the age of 13. So I think it's something that we as adults have to be aware of, but we also have to have these open discussions with children about what their data is, what can happen once it is mined or taken out into the ether of the internet, and giving them permission to make the important choice about their data and what is done with it, and how they can to some degree control what happens to their data. And on that note, in terms of the data, we also have to be aware of what are these companies doing with that data. Are they using it as a business model to make money by selling that data onwards? And on that front, we have to be very concerned about what these companies are doing with the data of children, and making sure that children are aware of this as well. The other point I want to make is about bullying and discrimination. And I think the hashtag autism challenges definitely showed that, on that 2-pronged approach that I was discussing earlier is including the education of disability awareness in schools. And I think we have to have those open discussions with children, both disabled and non-disabled, about the potential for bullying and discrimination happening on platforms such as TikTok, as well as other social media platforms. Because with that awareness, hopefully, comes an understanding and empathy to not actually take part in challenges such as the autism challenge. To finish up, I just want to kind of emphasize that point about challenging. We all have a responsibility to ourselves and children that we are creating safe spaces where they can engage with their peers. And especially for disabled young people, to have that safe space is even more important, especially if they can't access physically other spaces where they can engage with their peers. So I want to challenge you to keep on challenging these companies to make these spaces even safer, and to increase that understanding for yourself and your children about how to make these spaces safer and how to engage in empowering ways. Thank you very much.